Hello, 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 America. It's good to be with you.
Man.
American Awakening Squad from all around the U.S. and kicking it off for the Signs of Life team today. We're so glad to be with you all. These are dark days. We know they're dark days, but God is good in season, out of season, all the time. It does not change, and we are the same people. We're still his children, whatever time it is. He's got you in this time, and that's why we show up every day to remind you of that fact and have some fun along the way at the same time. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to our friend Josh Jacob, the House Worship Band, to get us going today.
Sweet. Thank you, John. This is called The Simple Gospel. I want to know you, Lord, like I know a friend. I want to know you, Lord. I want to know you, Lord, like I know a friend. I want to know you, Lord. So I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down. I want to know you, Lord. I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down. I want to know you, Lord. I used to think that I could box you in, but I'm laying down. I want to know you, Lord. I used to think that I could box you in, but I'm laying down. I want to know you, Lord. So I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down. I want to know you, Lord. So I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down. Lord, I've been told to be ashamed. Lord, I've been told I don't measure up. Lord, I've been told I'm not good enough. But you're here with me. Yeah. I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down. I want to know you, Lord. I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down. I want to know you, Lord. I will rejoice in the simple gospel. I will rejoice in you, Lord. I will rejoice in the simple gospel. I will rejoice. So I'm laying down on my religion. I'm laying down. I want to know you, Lord.
That's good.
Let's
That's
go,
good.
Josh.
Amen.
One of my favorite songs, man.
Mm-hmm. Where does that go back for you, Calvin? What did it bring up for you?
So the song's written by Will Reagan, who's a part of United Pursuit. And so one of the guys I lived with in DC, it's his cousin. And so I remember going to see them. They had this kind of house worship tour where they would go into just different houses rather than more of a traditional concert venue. I remember going, and that particular song was particularly powerful at the point of life I was in. So
that's awesome. Yeah, Will Reagan's phenomenal.
So good.
Incredible song.
Josh, where does it come to you from? How did you access it?
Yeah, so like the first song that I heard from this dude was called "Nothing I Hold On To," and I really liked it. And I was like, so what other songs does he do? And then because I was looking around for worship when I was a worship leader, and this song came up, and it just really got really into my head, got me in a good place to talk to God, and it was especially the line, I've been told to be ashamed. I've been told I don't measure up, and you go right back to God, laying down all of that kind of stuff, all your griefs and stuff. So.
Come on.
All right. I like that. Well, Tuesday through Friday, we have at the end of the show, we bring you to Nashville and our friend Dan Haseltine, and we had a special show with Andy Gullahorn today, and looking forward to that. Very excited about that. Before we get there, though, we got a few things to talk about, and I'm going to bring you to our friend in Gainesville, Florida, Pastor Joel Searby.
Hey, everybody. Good to see and hear you. I'm so thankful that you guys are tuning in today. My piece of this daily show is to bring what we call the daily dose, a little bit of encouragement and hope and joy and grounding in something that's maybe beyond ourselves. And this week we're talking about the earliest group of Jesus followers. We know most of what we know about them from the book of Acts, the Bible book of Acts. And in there, we see this group of people wrestling with a whole new way of being and a whole bunch of new circumstances and trying to figure out not only this life that is now changed in light of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, but also this new way of living together. And so I think it's really appropriate for us to be thinking about this right now during coronavirus and quarantines and a devastated economy and all the things that are changing and the new ways that we as God's people are trying to figure out how to live. And even if you're listening to this and you don't follow Jesus or you're not real sure about who God is, that's okay, because this stuff still applies in terms of just practical applications of living together in community. And so each day we're looking at a different aspect of what they devoted themselves to. The Bible says, Acts says that they devoted themselves to a couple of things: to fellowship, which we talked about yesterday, to teaching and learning together, to shared possessions, which we're going to talk about tomorrow. A little preview for Action Wednesday is going to be sharing our possessions, to prayer, which we're going to talk about Thursday, and to eating together, both symbolically and in community. Today we're talking about this idea of learning together. And, one thing that we've all learned, hopefully by now in our lives, if you're listening to this, is that we actually don't know everything and we need other people. And part of the aspect of this group of people trying to figure out this new way of life and this way of following God and this way of living together was that whatever they were learning, they devoted themselves to doing it together. And so we know that it's important that we have the input of others as we learn about God, learn about ourselves, learn about the world. That's part of the foundation of our modern education system, and really education in all of history, is that you learn from one another and together, because we each have different perspectives and we bring something different. But I think what I want to share with us today is perhaps the most important reason why we learn together and why they learned together, why they devoted themselves together to teaching and learning, what the Bible says is the apostles' teaching. They did it together because it's more life-giving when we do it together. We can consume a whole bunch of information right now by ourselves. That is very possible. But you're missing out when you don't digest and listen and interact together, because we're missing out on the beauty of the hope that comes through when other people can speak into it, the encouragement, the commiseration. When you learn and teach together, you find that you're bumping up against the humanity of other people and their ideas. And I really believe that it sharpens us and it gives us a different level of life when we learn together. So if you're trying to figure some things out right now, don't do it alone. That's my encouragement. That's my daily dose for you, is that we will say, whatever I need to learn in this time, I'm going to let other people help me, and I'm going to ask them for their input, and we're going to do it together, just like those first Jesus followers did. So that's my encouragement for the day. Learn together. John, that's the daily dose. Back to you.
Thanks, Joel. Before I kick it over to Jeff, question for you. So, we obviously don't get a chance to gather together. So how are you thinking about that right now, Joel? With us all being sheltered in place and social distancing and all that. How do you think about learning together?
So I'll just give my own family example. So we have a group of 4 other families that we've been getting together with that we're really close to for a long time. And, one of our families has a daughter who's immunocompromised. And so we just have to keep our distance right now, even if they lift certain regulations. So what we're going to be doing is on Thursday nights after our kids are in bed, because we all have kids, at 8:30 on Thursday nights, we're going to get together, do a Zoom meeting. I know we're all getting tired of Zoom, but it's what we've got right now. So we're going to be going deep on some topics together, and really just having some good discussion, maybe a glass of wine, some time together that takes us hopefully to a deep place, and we can encourage one another.
That's a good idea. I appreciate that. I organized just today my baseball fantasy league, which has been in my life for almost 30 years now. I know it makes me really, really old, but I founded it.
They had the internet back then?
And they did not. That's cruel, Jeff, but that's all right. I'm
Take it easy on the boy, Jeff.
I'm going to give you young ones a little story here. Back in the day when we started our baseball fantasy league 27 years ago, we had to take out the box scores from newspapers and add up the statistics ourselves and mail them in.
Wow.
Yes, I know. It's hard to believe, isn't it? No,
That's incredible.
I know. It's one of those things where when I recall that myself, I'm like, really? I did that? We did that? We all did that? So anyway, but this group of guys has been together for almost 3 decades now. And a lot of folks are believers in the group. A lot of folks are not believers in the group. The folks that do have faith as a cornerstone of their lives, invited them all together to get once a week and a weekly, devotional prayer sharing time on a conference call. So we're going to do that for the first time this Saturday. So when I don't get a chance to be here with you all or on the daily prayer call with our team, I get to do that with the guys around the country. So anyway, we're all figuring out ways to be adaptive under the circumstances, right?
Yeah, it's going to work.
Jeff Bethke. Now, I'm not. I think I should just skip you today because that.
Exactly.
Killing Marina. Take him off the air.
Don't do a Marina. No, I loved that though. I thought you were gonna say you sent it in via telegraph or something, but newspaper clippings or whatever, that's fine too. No, I that's phenomenal, and I feel like you earned it. Having been able to do the extra work. What I want to chat about today. Actually, Joel reminded me of yesterday, and so it's something to chew on. I don't know if some of you guys have read this book. It made a big splash probably 2 years ago. That's when I read it. Tribe or Tribes by Sebastian Junger. Brilliant, incredible, really thought-provoking book that totally relates to what Joel was talking about with how we're made for meaning, community, fellowship, relationship. And there were some really, really compelling things that I still chew on to this day from that book. A couple of them being one of the things I was most fascinated by is there's actual letters from some of our founders of our country, like Benjamin Franklin and some others, who decades before the revolution were lamenting basically this problem that started to arise with the settlers. And that's that essentially a lot of English settlers at some level would kind of defect over to the Native American side. They'd be allured by it, compelled by it, and they would just literally just leave modernity in the sense of like where the English settlements and just go live among the Native Americans. And that would actually happen enough where Benjamin Franklin actually has letters that you can go Google and read where he is lamenting it. Like, why are they doing that? Why are they leaving all of this that we've built and we're the peak of all society and technological innovation to go kind of live with the Native American people? And what's fascinating is it never happened reverse. Even when Native Americans would be captured in some type of battle or war, they would immediately, when released, go back. They would not want to stay. But that reverse was not true, where when English settlers were captured, they would actually, there's even stories again where they would just stay. They're like, we like it better here. And he goes on a lot of different stories in that book, essentially showing that we are created to be in tribes. We're created for community. We're created for relationship. And there's just fascinating stuff, too, that he goes into in regards to there's been data and studies done, and this is sad but true, where a lot of people who have even done military service, they actually now looking back on their career, looking back over the last decade, have more fonder memories sometimes of the wartime than when they came back, because there was something about them being with their tribe, being with their platoon on mission. They felt like they belonged. They felt like they had meaning and they felt like they had purpose. And sadly, our country does not offer a lot of that when you come back. There's something about our technological advancement, our innovations, the way we've set up society that actually fractures those things. It gets more and more individualistic. We go more and more into our echo chambers. And I could give more examples. The book is a profound, fascinating, really thought-provoking book I'll have you go look at. But what I do want you to chew on today is with those examples, right? And he compares even the rates of PTSD among American soldiers versus Israeli soldiers who actually have very different kind of way of setting up life, where actually soldiers would actually come back on Fridays for Shabbat dinner and then go back into the field, and meaning there's a tribe at home just as much as there's a tribe in the field. And they have way radically reduced PTSD rates, which shows it's not just about the war with PTSD, but it's actually about how we actually craft and create our human spirit in that and when we come home. And so my encouragement for you today, or something to chew on, is might this be that time that you can call this a crisis, you can call this a disaster. And while that will have enormous hardship, are you leaning into relationships right now and community, like Joel said, via Zoom, or whether you're with some roommates or whether you're with some family? I've already heard us doing family kind of work online that there's plenty of families that are actually saying, man, this is actually a huge reset button where my heart is returning home. And might it be a time for that, where we actually know we are created to belong. We're created to be in relationships. We cannot get all the joy and satisfaction and blessing that we want out of life just out of ourselves. We need other people. And I think right now is the moment to lean into that. And so that's something to chew on for you guys today, that we are created for purpose. We are created for belonging, and we can start pursuing that and lean into that right now.
Jeff, I'm glad I didn't cut you off. You redeemed yourself with that one, and I'm grateful. That is so on point, and it reminds me of a book that I'm coming out with this year.
I'm trying to set you up every day.
No, I'm just playing a little bit, but what's amazing to me is every day you're coming up with stuff. I'm like, yeah, I wish I'd added to that the book, because man, that really hits the point of purpose and community and tribe. Yeah. You're just right. We our natures never change. We are the same people in terrible times or in good times. We're made for purpose. We're made for meaning. We're put on the planet to overcome the adversity we're in, and we're meant to do that together. And when we forget any one of those principles, any one of those anchoring principles, we can do it for a while, but our lives get thin, and they get thinner and thinner and thinner. And you're right, Jeff. There's something to echoing Joel. And spot on your point. There's something about the thickness that comes with returning home in these moments. And a lot of us don't want to be home. I get it. You want to be out, you get tired of each other, et cetera. But that's life, folks. This has got a lot of hard dimensions of life, but it's got a lot of really wonderful, gracious dimensions of life too. And thanks for pointing that out. I really appreciate that, man. All right, pivoting over to the squad in Boston, we're going to go to our friend Calvin Lee. And wow, so that's happening, which is a rundown of the day's activities in this crazy, crazy world we're living in right now.
Thanks, John. And hey, I can't wait to read that book. Whatever book that you and Jeff are in cahoots about, I'm very excited for it to come out. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Grateful to be with each and every one of you. And today we're going to bring you a few stories that may remind us to remember who God is, who you are, and together keep the faith. So our first story. President Trump tweeted Monday that he intended to temporarily suspend immigration to the U.S., which he said would protect American workers from foreign competition once the nation's economy began to recover from the shutdown caused by the coronavirus outbreak. A formal order temporarily barring the issuance of new green cards and work visas could come within days, according to several people familiar with the plan, although it was unclear what legal basis President Trump would invoke to justify the move. Workers who have for years received visas to perform specialized jobs in the United States would be denied permission to arrive, though some workers in some industries deemed critical could be exempt from the ban. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp said some businesses, including gyms, hair salons, and bowling alleys, will be able to reopen as early as this week, which would be the most aggressive state action to reopen business after issuing an earlier stay-at-home order. On Friday, April 24th, a select number of businesses will be allowed to reopen, provided workers wear masks and gloves, stay 6 feet away from each other, and are screened for symptoms. Kemp also called dine-in options, said that dine-in options at restaurants, private social clubs, and theaters will be able to reopen on April 27th, subject to specific social distancing and sanitation mandates, which will be released in the coming days. According to Kemp, the state is on track to meet the criteria set by the White House to begin phase 1 of the federal government's plan to reopen states, which says states need to see a downward trajectory of cases within a 14-day period and have a robust testing program in place for at-risk healthcare workers. On Monday, Georgia had 6 days of decline, and if the trend continues, Friday would mark 10 days of declines, which is still less than the White House's recommendation. Public health experts continue to warn that relaxing social distancing rules too early could result in a resurgence of the disease. And lastly, in response to reports of farmers destroying crops, stomping fresh eggs, and dumping fresh milk, the U.S. Agriculture Department is now providing a $19 billion relief program for farmers and producers, as well as food assistance for Americans. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue said that under the new program, $16 billion in direct payments would go to farmers, ranchers, and producers who have experienced unprecedented losses. $3 billion would buy food for Americans to be distributed through food banks, as well as community and faith-based organizations. Now, some of you may remember we reported exactly a week ago today that Feeding America and other organizations
Did we lose Calvin?
We may have lost our friend.
I think we lost him.
Well, I'll pick it up here for a minute. And
look at him. He's still there. He's still there, just frozen. Look at him. Look at us. Oh, Marina, why'd you take him away? Oh, there he's back.
He's back.
There's back.
I had such a good finish.
Yeah. Well, you know,
not so much.
We're going to save that finish for tomorrow because it's going to be like big and bold and strong. So looking forward to that. I'll add to Calvin's story a minute ago that that there is a trend line here. In addition to Georgia, I think it's Tennessee, Florida, and a couple other southern states are looking to reopen within the week. So there's lots of obviously ongoing conversations about when the right time is and all that. But at some point we will reopen and we'll be back to regular life. So stay in there, hang in there, and take the blessings of the day that Jeff and Joel called out before while you still can, because you will be out there doing regular life at some point, I promise you. So speaking of which, why don't we kick it over to Marissa? I have, for me personally, I love every bit of this show, but the time when Marissa takes over is always the best part.
JK, thank you.
It's true. There's something special about this portion of the show. We should and maybe if Jeff keeps saying bad stuff, that we'll start to.
That's right, Jeff. You're out of here. You're out of here, Jeff.
That's right.
Over to you, Marissa. All
right. Well, so today's discussion question. I don't know if you all are keeping track of days. I know being trapped inside one day blurs into the next, and who knows what day it is. But it was 3 months ago today, exactly, that the U.S. confirmed the nation's first case of coronavirus. Now, the U.S. is reporting, of course, more cases than any other country, and lives around the world have been turned upside down. So now that we're 3 months in, scientists and researchers are starting to reflect on what they've learned. Greg Poland, who's a Mayo Clinic infectious disease expert who has been working, 14 to 16 hours a day for months, says the canvas that we call COVID-19 was blank 14 weeks ago. It's been amazing to see the amount of knowledge that's been generated. It's never been done before in human history. In just a few months, we've genetically sequenced the virus. We've identified risk factors and initiated drug tests. We've learned that social distancing can help bend the curve, that we can work and educate from a distance, that telehealth can help decrease costs and increase access, and that doctors and nurses can work across state borders. We've also learned that something that happened in a city that most people have never heard of can be inside the U.S. within 24 to 36 hours. We've learned just how interconnected we are. said Poland. So taking a page from the researchers, I figured it would be a good time, this 3-month point, to start to reflect amongst ourselves. So guys, within these last 3 months, what has Corona taught you? What have you learned? And have you, like the researchers, had any tangible successes or wins or work that you're experiencing for the very first time now? What have the last 90 days meant to you?
Well, that's a good question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's good. I've learned a lot. I'll start with a little bit lighter note, but actually super true, which is that if you take care of your yard and your garden every day, it looks really good.
It looks better than if you did it.
And that's it. I mean, that's it, right?
That's a good word.
You know, if you're out in your yard every day and you're trimming it and you're pruning it and you're pulling the weeds, and I'm an outside guy. I love being outside. My yards never look better. So I don't know if that's something like, I'm sure there's some metaphor and analogy or whatever you smart people do, but that's just real for me.
That's a good one. Everyone's lawns and everything is looking better than ever right now.
Mm. Well, let that be a metaphor for our emotional and familial lives as well. Do it, Lord. Let us be taking care of it every day so it can look better than ever.
That's good.
Jeff, were you going to mention
I'm
something?
not going to add much, but I kind of alluded to what I would say earlier of just like, yeah, I think it's been a time for a lot of people just to have their heart return home, and that's what's been true of us, of just, leveling up, just times together, the things that seem mundane and slow and full of purpose and, and all that. So I've been loving that stuff. I feel like we've already done, but just when you're home every single day, you do it every day, like Jill talked about. And so I think it becomes just really powerful and more of a ritual and stuff like, playing with the kids and making dinner and eating at a table, stuff like that. That's just, things that are basic and ordinary, but really, really holy, I think.
That's good. That's good. Calvin, what have you been learning?
Man, well, what I have learned is that because I probably spent most of my time around you guys, at least consistently my afternoons with you guys, family is being redefined, at least for me. What social distancing has forced us to do is reevaluate, not who I can be interacting with out there, but who is around me. I think there's the blessing of proximity that we often forget about. And so, I think, something's been really special for me personally is that my fiance's roommate, we've actually gotten to know her much better over the last few weeks. And this was a friendship that may never have been cultivated if not for the forced social distancing in us that, who else do we have to interact with? So might as well interact with the people right around you. So that's been actually a really special friendship that's come out of, I guess, a challenging situation. And I'm very excited because she has invited me to a group called Kuumba, which is a traditional African singing and dance group that I'm very excited to join once all this is over.
Calvin, you've been talking about Kuumba for months, and I know not for nothing. I'm not saying that you're using your new friend for an invite, but it really sounds like that's what you've been working your way into. That's what it sounds like. No shame.
I believe that my God opens doors in wondrous ways.
That's right. That's real. That's absolutely real.
Man, that is one sly fox, that guy. So what's the group? What's the group? You're going to be in the group, Calvin?
I think it's the Kuumba group, singing group for Harvard College. Yeah. So I recently found out that there is no actual auditions, so it's perfectly okay if I'm in the back lip syncing. But I'm going to give it my all, and I'm just grateful that they might have me.
Wow.
Can you give us a preview? What is Kuumba style?
Just do it. Go ahead. Free form right now.
Guys, would you look at the time? The show is
go
on. Time is ticking.
There's plenty of time for this. Plenty of time for this.
Calvin, you back
if
to
you want
right
a
into
preview,
this.
I will say that something I've been listening to get in the mood has been Jesus is Born album, the Sunday Service Choir with Kanye. And so, again, I'm not exactly sure if that is Kuumba. I think, again, there's so much for me to learn. But it's been a taste of the kind of gospel-style music that I'm very much looking forward to learning.
That's fantastic, Calvin.
Well, you better get it, Calvin. You better get it. But I mean, honestly, if you come out of this season with Kaumba though, and you don't have like any real moves, I'm going to count this a real loss. I just have to
Then
tell you,
Marissa, you
got to
gotta
bring your
teach me
moves.
something.
Well, I mean, it can only go so far, but I'm just saying, feel it, Calvin, feel it.
I'm a
It's
willing
real.
student, my assistant.
That's awesome. Well,
Well-
I'm going to, in a slightly different vein, I'll say something along the lines of what Calvin was saying, but this time in a family setting. And, as so often, it thematically ties with the comments of Joel and Jeff before. And in this case, I'll just say to my family, in my own family, in ways that you may not want to be forced to reckon with issues and relationships. On the other hand, it's good to reckon with issues in relationships with the people that are closest to you in the world. And this time definitely has allowed, me and my family an opportunity, and me personally, to be able to address some, long latent issues. We all have them. Relationships are complicated. We know that. We love each other in families, but same time we misunderstand each other a lot. And so, the chance to work through that, me with some of my children, some of my children with each other, et cetera. So, there's no time in life that's an unalloyed bad or an unalloyed good. It's usually a mix of the both. And right now, that's one that's definitely we're pulling out of this time. So, Marissa, do you have any wrap-up points?
Well, other than the fact that I've always loved my family, but this time away, I mean, I cannot wait to be with y'all when I can again. You all, it's Zoom's great and FaceTime's great and calls are great, but I need to see y'all. So if you're watching, especially you, Kamea, out in Cleveland, you said you'd watch today, so I can't wait to see you. But other than that, really, I've just been amazed at as I've leaned into this season, as we collectively have leaned into this season, it's just been, I don't know, it's been amazing to just see how we've worked all these months, on these projects that are very big projects that are yet to come. But when we sort of took a step back and were willing to sort of keep looking at those projects, but take real inventory of the moment and really, realize that perhaps we were called for such a time as this. Just the fruit that's come of that, our team working together now more closely than we ever have, having some real sort of wins on a daily basis, being able to finally sort of come together in the immediacy of the now, I think has been a real blessing. So these last months have just continued to confirm for me, like, trust your gut, Marissa, when something's saying like, lean in now, plant yourself here, continue to sort of, run in this direction, especially if it's God stuff, go for it. He's calling us for such a time as this, all of us. So that's my greatest lesson in these last 90 days.
That is a lot of lesson. And I'll just say for everybody out there that's listening to us on the pod or watching us live stream, this is Marissa's vision. We're here every day with you all because Marissa was like, 5.5 weeks ago, it's Corona time, and that's our time. We're gonna put up a sign and hang out our shingle, come together every day, tell everybody that God loves them and they're made for purpose and meaning and significance. And thank you, Marissa, for following that, and thank you for this one gift that Corona gave us by you following your instincts on that. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. All right, so we are behind time, so we're going to hurry on away to Nashville. And Dan Haseltine and Andy Gullahorn, we're so looking forward to having you with us. Thank you, Dan, as always, for lining up music. And thank you, Andy, for being with us, man. This is awesome.
Yeah. Well, thanks. We're coming to you from Nashville. It's so good to be on with you. I guess in the category of things that I'm surprised about America, as we've all been talking about things reopening, bowling alleys getting such a huge shout out. I would not have expected that one. I feel like the Big Lebowski fans are getting kind of a second or third wave. Like they're really they're coming into their own again with this whole thing that bowling alleys. Cause I was just kind of going through my list of things that, oh gosh, if things start to get a little bit back to some sense of normalcy, what is the thing that I really want to do? And I didn't put bowling on my list, but it's there. And one of the reasons I bring that up is because our musical guest today, I actually, when I was first starting to get to know this musical guest, he was inviting and hosting a bowling league, and he was just doing inviting a bunch of guys to go and have lunch and do bowling. And over the years, I've come to understand that this is part of Andy Gullahorn's creative process, is this constant inviting people into various forms of community through different activities, bowling being one of those. So it's a great privilege to have Andy on the show. As a songwriter, Andy just has written some of the great lyrics that I've, have. You always come to that point in a song where, where there's a turn of a phrase or something happens and you kind of go, oh, wow, that was brilliant. Andy's collection in his canon of songs that he's written, that's just a given, that there are many, many, many of those kinds of moments. So, and he's collaborated with a lot of different artists, from Jason Gray to Sarah Groves, Andrew Peterson, Jill Phillips, his wife, also an amazing voice and artist. And on top of that, he is a professional high fiver. And I'll let Andy describe that a little bit. A lot of you may know this about him, but Andy, tell us. Welcome to the show first, and tell us a little bit about this this high
Hello
five
there.
thing.
This might be a little awkward because I'm guessing that you want me to talk because I can see myself on the screen, but I couldn't hear Dan at all. I could hear everybody else other than Dan. So somebody else there can.
You couldn't hear Dan?
Did he say a bunch of mean things about me?
He did. Yeah. He said a bunch of mean things, and then he told you to tell a story about high-fiving. That was basically what he just said.
And he said you're a big bowling dude. You talked about your bringing people together for bowling confabs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't been bowling much lately. It was really, this Corona thing has really put a dent in that. It's also.
Are you bowling alone? Get it?
Yes.
Classic book.
Great book. Yes. So I'll talk about the high five. I will say, though, that Dan looked really wise and intellectual while he was talking. I just didn't hear anything that he said.
Good.
So the high five thing, it was just, there's a good friend of mine named Gabe Scott, who we've been on tours together for the last almost 20 years. And we just wanted to spend more time together, and always talked about spending more time together, and it never really happened. And then one time we were having this conversation, I realized he moved 1.5 miles from me. And I thought, it's crazy you live 1.5 miles from me, and I only see you 1 month out of the year when we're on this tour together. So I had this stupid idea of, I was going to text him one day, and we were going to leave our houses at the same time, and we would meet in the middle point and give each other a high five and then go back home. And really the goal was, one, to see each other more often. And two, I said if we did the high five once a week for 10 years, then that's the kind of story they would do on CBS Sunday Morning or something like that. And that was our goal. We wanted to get on CBS Sunday Morning. So we started doing this high five every week, walking 1.5 miles to give each other a high five. And we would talk, after we gave the high five most times. And April 30th, so coming up next week or a week and a half from now, will be 6 years of walking to give a high five every week. I will say that the last few weeks, there have been a couple of weeks we did it, made sure we were wearing gloves. And we also had long sticks that we put gloves on the end of. So we were more than 6 feet apart when we gave our high fives. But we've still been doing it during this time, just walking to the park. And it really has changed my life in so many ways. One is just, I get to spend more time with my friend, and he's more a part of my life now. But it has really taught me that doing small, seemingly insignificant things, just being faithful to them over a long period of time is incredibly life-changing. And some people laugh when I say this. I get why they laugh, but I don't mean it as a joke, that the high five has become probably one of my greatest spiritual disciplines in my life. Just showing up over and over and over again. And just so happens I have a song kind of about it. Maybe I should play that song. Let's see.
I love that. That's awesome.
All right.
So this song was inspired by the high five. I was thinking about writing it, thinking of my oldest son, who's a senior in high school this year, and thinking of our college trips and that kind of thing. And what have I taught my son before he's heading off to college? And I hope I didn't teach him a lot of things that would probably would be useful in life, but I hope he knows that it's worth having a friend in this life that you would walk a mile and a half to give a high five to every week for a long period of time. So this is coming up, the 6-year anniversary of the high five. There's also a nod to one of my favorite humans, Eugene Peterson, who always taught me that small things are worth doing. So
Yes.
Your world is filling up with shiny things, and the pressures of keeping up are rising. They'll tell you something's missing, try to sell you more. But going bigger, faster, it's not always what you need. Knowing small things matter, it's really no small thing. Sometimes my economy is upside down. I lose track of the things I care about. When I start chasing power, I wind up getting caught. 'Cause I could climb the ladder, get further from my dreams. Knowing small things matter, it's really no small thing. So take a walk with me on Monday morning, through the same old small streets of our neighborhood. Oh, it's no marathon that ends in glory, but it's good. It's good. Oh. So pay close attention to the ones who've been living with a long obedience in the same direction. They'll tell you without speaking of the beauty in this world. If beauty's what you're after, it's here in spades to see. Knowing small things matter changes everything. If beauty's what you're after, just look close to see. Knowing small things matter, it's really no small thing.
That is all right. All right.
That's
Thank you. Thank
Love
you.
it.
I wonder
That's
if I can hear Dan yet. Dan,
I don't know.
say something. I
you-
still
can
can't
you hear
you.
me?
I don't know. I
Weird.
see your lips moving. I'm going to try to lip read. You said, Andy, you look good and you just kissed me. Okay.
Good. That's
That's-
all right.
so I am going to try to play the role of Dan, which is hard because he is both much more clever than me, and I think he's got a great new haircut too, right?
It's
His wife did it. I
Yeah,
just read it first.
That's a fresh cut. Yeah. Well, so I'm gonna do my best here. Dan, thank you so much for your clever commentary for the rest of us in between.
Yeah.
And he said some wonderful things about you, so you know. We'll catch up on those later. But that's all. Small things matter. I mean, that just spoke volumes to me. It's right on time, just the right time to hear that today. Thank you so much for playing that for us. Do you have another one you could play for us?
I do. I'll kind of keep on the same theme. I and listen to you guys and your discussion. I was thinking about the year 2016 for me was a rough year creatively. I didn't write any songs in 2016, and I started writing songs when a long time ago, and I've written a lot of songs every year. 2016 was a dry year for a number of reasons. One was there was a thing called the election happening. I don't know if you guys remember, and people were really not all on the same page. And I'm a peacemaker. I like when people get along. So I kept feeling this need to write a song that would bring everybody together, make everybody love each other again. And that was too big of a task. It was just paralyzing. So I just didn't write anything. And coming out of 2016, I kind of, rather than thinking about how to fix, these huge things in the world, I realized if I wanted to have something to offer the world creatively, or have some kind of growth in my own life, I kind of had to get really small and just look at my family and my neighborhood and my local community. And one thing that helped me when Harvey hit, and I went down to Houston to visit a lot of friends who had been impacted by it. It reminded me of the time we had a flood here in Nashville, and actually, we had the tornado in Nashville early March. But when those kinds of things happen, the world gets really small. I mean, it's something that affects a lot of people, but it gets really small. You see your neighbors and you see people wandering the streets with chainsaws, cutting down trees. And when I was in Houston, I would see the basements of these churches filled with power tools and just covered with dust because they're going out from there to help people, tear down their houses and that kind of thing. And just a reminder that, in a time like this, where there's something that's like literally global pandemic, one of the blessings of this time for me has been how small my world has gotten. I walk the same streets every day, and I see the same neighbors out in front of their houses, and it helps me to remember that maybe some kind of a solution or a way to help in something that is that big isn't to try to, some people do policy for the whole nation, but for me, it's just to love the space around me well. And so this song was inspired by my friends in Houston after Harvey and some other things in the world. I see torches marching, afraid of losing ground, to the right side of history. The statues coming down. I see anger driving straight into the crowd. Though it all feels too far gone to change. Where there is a will, there is a way. And it's gonna take a village. It's gonna take some time. It's gonna take the blood, the sweat, and tears. We're gonna cry. We'll face the night together till the morning comes around. It's gonna take a village to bring love back to this town. I see water rising days after the storm, 'cause we can't stand the pressure of a heavy reservoir. Now we knife all the drywall, start tearing up the floors, strip it till the studs are all that stand. 'Cause if we're gonna build it back again, it's gonna take a village, it's gonna take some time, it's gonna take the blood, the sweat and tears we're gonna cry. We'll face the night together till the morning comes around. It's gonna take a village to bring love back to this town. Lay down my guns, lay hate to rest, by taking a good hard look at the heart in the center of my own chest. This side of the street, all the work is my own. Oh, but I don't have to walk it alone. No, I turn to the gold rule when I get stuck in my ways. When I look at the impasse, start to lose faith. Every stranger is a neighbor, I just don't know his name. I have to love local for the world to change. It's gonna take a village, it's gonna take some time, it's gonna take the blood, the sweat, tears we're gonna cry. We'll face the night together till the morning comes around. It's gonna take a village to bring love back to this town. Yeah, it's gonna take some time. The blood, the sweat, and tears we're gonna cry. We'll face the night together till the morning comes around. It's gonna take a village to bring love back to this town.
That is so good.
Yeah.
Andrew.
That's right, Andy.
And,
Thank you. So powerful.
Yes.
so much.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
And I think that the lesson that you're leaving with us here is either go small, which is a great one, of course, all time. That's a good one. And also, you know, your story about 2016 and what that did to you, and thinking about the you know, what's proportionate for each one of us to do. You know, each one of us have a spot we're supposed to fill into. Some of it's really small, some of it's medium sized, some of us just take the big swings. As you said, some folks got to do policy. And so, you know, each one of us got to figure that out every day. Marissa, as she told us earlier, figured that out in this time of Corona and said, hey, we're supposed to step up as a team and get online every day. And thank you for that, Marissa. But that's a proportionate response to the challenge of the day. And Andy, thank you for teaching us a little bit about that. Appreciate it so much.
So good.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm so sorry that Dan and Andy cannot make contact with each other.
Right.
I got to translate. Yeah, exactly.
Go yell out your window, Dan. Maybe I could hear you.
Fantastic stuff. So thanks everybody for being with us. We look forward to being back with you all tomorrow. Until then, we just want to say thank you to all of you that are out there. We're praying for you every day. We get on the line. We pray for you every day. Thank you for Dan. Thank you for Andy. Thank you for the rest of the squad that's bringing us this show today. Really appreciate all of you. And until tomorrow, God bless you, and fighting a good fight out there. We're going to get past this.